In 1935, in the depths of the Great Depression, two teenage brothers in Springfield, Massachusetts, borrowed $547 from their parents and opened a tiny ice cream shop. Presley Blake was 20. His brother Curtis was 18. They gave the shop a one-word name that was really a promise: Friendly. For the next 70 years, that promise held. Friendly's became the place where America celebrated. The birthday sundae with the little paper umbrella and the candle stuck in the whipped cream. The Fribble so thick you nearly pulled a muscle on the straw. The clam roll on a summer Friday. The waitress in the striped smock who knew your grandmother's order. The Sunday after church, the whole family crammed into one booth, the little ones spinning on the stools. If you grew up anywhere in the Northeast, you didn't just eat at Friendly's, you grew up in it. It was the reward for a good report card, the stop on the way home from the lake, the first place a teenager ever picked up a check to look like a grown-up. At its peak, there were more than 800 Friendly's restaurants. Today, there are about 87. So what happened? You'll hear the easy answers. That taste changed. That people wanted Cold Stone. That casual dining just faded. And those things aren't nothing. But they aren't the real story. Because the real story isn't about the ice cream at all. It's about something that happened quietly, behind the scenes, years after the founders were gone. Stay with me, because once you see how it was done, you won't forget it. It started with that nickel cone. The first few days, the Blake brothers served their ice cream in little paper cups, and nothing much happened. Then they started scooping double-dip cones for 5 cents each, and the line went out the door. Customers wanted more, so the brothers added food. The very first thing on the menu was a hamburger. Almost by accident, the ice cream shop had become a restaurant. By 1951, there were 10 Friendly's across Connecticut and western Massachusetts. The brothers ran it the way you run something you built with your own hands and your parents' money. Carefully. Personally. They obsessed over the details, right down to the exact weight of a scoop, because every location was supposed to feel like the first one. A friendly place for families. That was the whole idea. And as the chain spread through New England and out across the Northeast, it kept working. The smiling logo went up over highways and main streets. For a couple of generations, Friendly's wasn't a trend. It was just there, the way a good neighbor is there. In 1979, after more than 40 years behind the counter, Presley and Curtis Blake retired and sold Friendly's to the Hershey Chocolate Company for about $164 million. Under Hershey, the chain hit its high watermark. More than 800 restaurants, the most it would ever have. Then, in 1988, Hershey sold it again to a company run by an executive named Donald Smith for $375 million. Smith made one small change that stuck. He added an S, and Friendly officially became Friendly's. And here is where the founder walks back into his own story. Because Presley Blake never really let go. In 2003, in his late 80s, the man who had started the whole thing with $547 took the company he founded to court. He accused the chairman, Donald Smith, of using a corporate jet for personal trips and of funneling around $3 million a year out of Friendly's and into another restaurant chain that Smith controlled. Picture that. An 89-year-old founder suing to force the money back into the company that carried his name. Critics of Smith called it exactly the kind of quiet self-dealing that bleeds a company from the inside. Smith eventually agreed to pay Friendly's back. But the fight was a warning of what was coming. Because the next owners wouldn't just take the jet, they would take the ground the building stood on. In 2007, a private equity firm called Sun Capital Partners bought Friendly's for $337 million. Now, in fairness, Friendly's was already under real pressure by then. Casual dining was crowded, the brand was tired, and the crowds were thinning. But what happened next is a textbook of how you strip a company for parts. Sun Capital did something called a sale-leaseback. Friendly's owned hundreds of valuable restaurant properties, free and clear. Sun Capital sold them. And Friendly's immediately had to rent back the very buildings it once owned, paying rent, forever, on ground it used to own outright. Money that once bought fresh ingredients and paid the staff now went straight out the door to landlords every single month. On top of that, they paid themselves dividends with borrowed money. And then they waited. It took 3 years. In 2011, Friendly's filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy, buried in debt. And this is the part that caught the attention of the federal government. In that bankruptcy, the plan was to dump the pensions of nearly 6,000 workers and retirees. More than $100 million in promises shoved onto the federal government's pension insurance agency, sticking taxpayers with the bill, while Sun Capital kept control of the company itself. The agency took the rare step of fighting back, and federal officials said the whole maneuver looked like a fraud. It ended in a settlement. And then it happened again. In 2020, Friendly's filed for bankruptcy a second time and was sold off in pieces. By then, the private equity firm behind it had watched its restaurant companies go bankrupt 7 separate times. The 800 restaurants just kept shrinking, 600, 500, 200, down toward the 87 that are left today. And through all of it, Presley Blake was still alive. The founder lived to 106 years old, passing away in 2021. Imagine living long enough to watch the company you built with 547 borrowed dollars become an American institution, and then living long enough to watch strangers take it apart, piece by piece. He saw both. The nickel cone at the beginning, and at the end, the pensions of 6,000 workers thrown to the taxpayers, while the owners walked away richer than when they came. That is the thing about how these places really die. We like to tell ourselves they die of progress, that the world simply moved on. And sometimes that's true. But Friendly's didn't starve. It was carved up while it was still breathing. Because by the end, the ice cream wasn't the business anymore. The buildings were. The people were a cost. And the brand was just collateral. If you've still got a Friendly's in your town, go this week. Order the Fribble. Sit in the booth. Because places like this don't disappear all at once. They disappear one closing at a time. And if you remember the birthday sundaes, the clam roll, the smile on that old sign, tell me about it in the comments. I read every one. Subscribe and stick around for more stories of the giants we grew up with and the people who took them apart.